Hey everybody, I'm excited to have an opportunity to record this video for you guys because this is the announcement that I think all of us have been waiting for. So if you can't figure it out by now, the background is different because I am back at the church, and so the details we're gonna talk about over the next few minutes, but we're coming back and we are going to be regathering soon. So I'm going to give you guys the lowdown of everything. I figured the best way for us to do this would just be to kind of put together a little mock question and answers time where we try to answer some of the questions that you may have for us. And then if you've got other questions, I'm sure you guys will get in touch with us. But at least hopefully this will check off the first few from where things are probably headed, because I know everybody's got questions, and we're excited about getting back. So I just want to read for you guys and share with you a little bit before we get into the nuts and bolts of what all of this means and what coming back together is going to look like. But after much prayer, much discussion, much feedback, thank you so much for all of you who gave feedback to that survey that we sent out last week. And all the conversation, we have decided as the elders of the church to get back together to in-person gatherings starting next weekend, not this weekend at the end of May, but next weekend, June 6th and 7th will be our first weekend back. So before we get into the details of some of the what's included and what's not, I just want to share with you guys a little scriptural reminder for us. So as we return, we have a church of 300 people or so. And in having 300 individuals that come to our church, everybody has a different opinion and different views on what we should do, what we shouldn't do, how we should be responding to this virus, what's safe for people, all those different details. And we've tried to, in all of our conversations, just make the decisions that are best for everyone involved. This isn't about what I think. This isn't about what any of our elders think or what any of you think. This is about what's best for everyone, and ultimately the way that Jesus wants us to interact and respond to each other. So as we get ready to do that and talk about what all of this is going to look like, there are going to be details, I'm absolutely certain there are going to be details of our church's policy on how we're going to deal with getting back together in person that you may disagree with, and that is totally okay for you to disagree with us. We don't have to agree about everything that has to do with the coronavirus and what the virus is and what the virus isn't, and how we should be responding to the virus. All of this, your individual approach to how you're dealing with the virus really is not what this video is about, or our discussion about getting back together as a church is about. What we do need to remember is that God has made it very clear to all of us as Christians that we are supposed to show love to one another. We are supposed to show respect for our neighbors and for our fellow church members. And so as we talk about regathering, that is going to be the first and foremost, the most important thing that we do in all of this. Our policy is we want to love our neighbor well. We want to respect our fellow churchgoer well. And there are some scriptures that I want to start with before we get into the nuts and bolts that are going to hopefully, as we keep these in the forefront of our mind, hopefully we'll be able to allow these to kind of shape our thinking as we respond to some of the details that maybe sound great to you, and maybe some of the details that you're not a big fan of as we share the details. So first, we want to consider the selfless example of Jesus. So in Philippians chapter 2, we see just some wonderful verses that talk about how Jesus selflessly humbled himself for sinful people like me and like you, that he would offer himself as a sacrifice. So Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 through 8 says, "Have this attitude in yourselves, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, although he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as a thing to be grasped. But he emptied himself, taking the form of a bondservant, and being made in the likeness of men. Being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross." Jesus was willing to lay all of the glories of heaven aside for being willing to come to earth and to serve me and serve you in offering himself as a sacrifice. Mark 10, verse 45 also kind of affirms that. It says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." So in light of Jesus' example, the Bible also commends us to live in the exact same way. Philippians chapter 2, if we read the few verses that came before that section that I just read, Paul encourages us. He says, "Do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but in humility of mind, consider one another as more important than yourselves." That's going to be key for us here in just a minute. Consider one another as more important for yourselves. Do not merely look out for your own personal interests, but also for the interests of others. I'll just let that one sit and resonate in your mind for a minute. Next, Mark chapter 10, the verses right before the ones that I just read about Jesus giving his life as a servant, says, "Whoever wishes to become great among you shall be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you shall be slave of all." Even in some of the most famous words in all of Scripture, Jesus commends us to love our neighbors, that loving our neighbors is a way that we can express our love for God. So Matthew 22, verses 36 through 39, some of the teachers, the religious leaders came to Jesus, and they kind of tried to stump Jesus. And so the teacher says to Jesus in Matthew 22, 36, he says, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment of the law?" And Jesus said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind." And hear this, verse 38. "This is the great and foremost commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself." A heart that understands the gospel of Jesus Christ and has received his gift of salvation should be marked by generosity, should be marked by kindness towards other people. So even though we're going to talk about some restrictions, we're going to talk about some policies that we're going to put in place for our church to try to do what's best for, we believe, for keeping everyone safe and going just above and beyond to show love to other people. They may even seem unnecessary to some of you. And while I totally understand your feelings that some of these things may feel unnecessary, what we're trying to do in asking people to take these extra steps of precaution, these extra steps of generous love and support for their neighbor is we want to show love and value the person sitting next to us. Wearing protective equipment or sitting distanced away from somebody else really is not about us. It's about loving the person that's sitting next to us. So finally, as a challenge for everyone, before we get into the details, I want to turn our attention to Romans chapter 12. In Romans chapter 12, Paul challenges the church, and in verses 3 through 8, Romans 12, 3 through 8, Paul talks about how the church should serve one another. He talks about spiritual gifts and how the church is made to serve one another. And then starting in verse 9, it jumps into a section that talks about the true marks of a Christian, the true things that will identify us and mark us as people that have given our lives and our hearts to Jesus. And I want to read Romans chapter 12, verses 9 and 10. I'm going to read them from the English Standard Version. I think it just says this really wonderfully. It says, "Let your love be genuine. Abhor what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with brotherly affection, and outdo one another in showing honor." I just love that simple statement, that simple idea of outdoing one another in showing honor. I'm a super competitive person, and so this idea of kind of having a competition, I'm going to love you more than you can love me. Let's look for ways that we can selflessly humble ourselves, make things as little about us as we can, because I want to outdo you in showing you honor. So I want to do everything that I can. One simple little way that my wife fusses at me sometimes because I go above and beyond with this, but one simple way that I do this personally in my own life is I make it my goal at church to park farther away from the building than anyone else. So when I get here in the mornings, I park far away from the building so that I feel like if I can give someone a spot that's just a little bit closer to the church, maybe that's a simple way that I can show honor to someone else, that I can make someone else's morning a little bit easier, that I can sacrifice something that might be easy for me sacrifice that someone else can receive that blessing. So we want to do that. We want to make that our goal as a whole, as a church across the board, as we gather back together and get back together in this building. As you sit in these seats that are sitting right behind me, we want to do that as best as we can. So with that said, some questions and answers. I'm just going to go through these really quickly, and then I'm sure you guys will get in touch with us if there are details that don't seem clear. So question number one that we anticipated: when are we getting back together? Well, we are going to have our soft reopening on Saturday, June the 6th at 5 p.m., our normal Saturday night service time on June the 6th at 5 p.m. And then Sunday morning, June the 7th, we are going to have one worship service at 10 a.m. So 10 a.m. is when we've been streaming for the last 3 months or so. So we are going to have one worship service at 10 a.m. More details about that in just a minute. Why only 2 services each weekend? Question number 2. Why only 2 services each weekend? So we are going to be offering one service on Saturday night and one service on Sunday to start with, to allow our team, to allow our cleaners ample time to come in and to make sure that cleaning and disinfecting and the building is well cleaned before the next group of people comes in. So that would be more difficult if we tried to have multiple services on the same day on a Sunday morning. And so instead of trying to do that and figure out exactly what that's going to look like, we're going to start by having one service on Saturday night at 5 and one service on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Question number 3, what cleaning or sanitation measures are being put in place for the building? So we are going to have a team of people cleaning high contact surfaces when the services are happening. So when you are at the building, we are going to have volunteers who are wiping down things like door handles, things like the bathroom knobs and things like that, anywhere that people are regularly touching, we're going to have a team of people that are coming around and cleaning and disinfecting those surfaces as we're gathered together. We are also going to have hand sanitizer readily available for you. So as you're coming into the building, we're going to have it available. As you're coming into the sanctuary, we're going to have it available. As you're out in the hallway, we're going to have it available. So that will be there and ready to help you keep your hands clean as you're moving around in the building. Question number 4, what other safety measures are going to be implemented? So this one's probably a big one that a lot of people have been wondering about, or I've had several conversations about, but face masks are going to be required, that we want to ask all of our people to. This really comes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. Sacrifice a little bit of our comfort, a little bit of our freedoms, if you will, for the sake of the person sitting next to us. So we understand that this may be an inconvenience, that you may have to wear your glasses a little further down on your nose so they don't fog up, or that it's a little bit uncomfortable. But this is going to be just a very clear way of loving the person sitting next to us. We don't know what's going on in the mind of the person sitting a few chairs away from you, and so if wearing a mask is going to give them a little bit of a peace of mind, we want to do that, and we want to ask everyone in our church to do that. So as best as you can, get your masks for your kids. Plan on bringing your mask. If you don't have one, I know we've been talking about it for the last several weeks. We've emailed you about it, but we have some that are available as a church as well. So we can provide you with one if you need to, but we are going to ask people to wear masks while they are in the building for worship services. We are also going to have chairs in the sanctuary that will be socially distanced, that we're going to maintain 6 feet of distance between families, and we are going to limit our capacity in the rooms to 25% of our fire capacity. So I don't know if you guys can see it behind me. I will slide out of the way just a little bit. We're starting to figure out exactly what that's going to look like and how the chairs are going to be removed. But we will have some of our chairs removed from the sanctuary, and we will be working with 25% of our fire capacity in this room. So since there are only going to be about 25% of the people, it leaves us about 75 chairs in the sanctuary. We're also going to have overflow rooms available in the rest of the building where people will be encouraged to sit and watch the services on the TVs that we've got. We'll have the live stream available in different parts of the building. So even if you're unable to get a seat in the sanctuary, you can still sit with your church family and watch the service and learn together. You're just going to get to look at this ugly face on a TV screen like you have been instead of in person. So we're going to have plenty of seats available. We'll just have those in different parts of the building where we can make sure that you're distanced. Question number 5, what about health screening upon arrival? We would ask, in the interest of loving your neighbor, that anyone who has been experiencing any symptoms of COVID-19, any symptoms that are associated with COVID-19, that if you've been experiencing those symptoms in the last 14 days, or if you've been in contact with someone, you know a friend that has had a fever and has had a cough or something like that, that you've been around in the last 14 days, we would ask you to stay home in the interest of loving your neighbor and continue to worship with us via our videos that we're going to have on YouTube. We're also going to ask that anyone before they come to church, that you would check your temperature at home and check your children's temperature as well. And anyone who comes to church on Saturday or Sunday, we want to ask that your temperature would be between 96.0 and 100.3. So if you are 100.4 or above, we are going to ask that you refrain from coming and worshiping in person with the church family. Or if your temperature is below 96, our healthcare professionals that we've been talking to, that we've got some healthcare people in our church, they said that both too hot or too cold of a temperature can both be indicative of a problem. So we're going to ask you to check your temperature at home. We are also, we've purchased non-contact thermometers that we will be checking temperatures at the door as you're coming in. It's a quick little process that you'll hold it up near your forehead. We'll have one of our volunteers hold it up, and in about a second, it's going to beep, say, hey, here's what the temperature is, and we're just going to ask that anybody who is, again, under 96.0 or above 100.4 degrees, we're going to ask you to worship from home. So hopefully we don't have anybody that tests high or low at the door, but we would ask you to just be understanding of that as we try to implement that. Question number 6, what about congregational singing? Congregational singing is one of the things that a lot of people have talked about, a lot of churches have discussed, and so during our immediate return, our band is going to be providing us music to worship with, but we would ask that people remain seated and either listen to the worship or sing quietly at your seat. So we're not going to stand up and project and sing loudly and sing proudly like we maybe were before all of this happened. So we will still have music as a part of our service, but we're just going to ask our people to, as we're together at the church, just to sit and listen quietly or to worship reflectively in your heart or in the quietness of your seat as we prepare for preaching the word. Question number 7, what about my children? Will child care and children's classes be available when we come back to church? So I know this is one that impacts my family a lot and several other of our church families. So we would ask that all families keep their children with them during the service and will be directed to find a seat either in our cafe area or in our family overflow area that we're going to have available upstairs in one of our classrooms in order to accomplish a couple of different things. First, it's going to allow our members who may be more at risk to sit in the sanctuary or in a separate overflow room in the building without having children around. I can just tell you guys, I know for absolute certainty from my family's experience, it's difficult to control the space of children. It's difficult to keep them sitting in their seats and wearing their masks and abiding by all the rules that we're trying to put in place. So people that are more at risk are going to be invited here into the sanctuary where they're not around kids, and hopefully that will help us keep them a little bit safer. It's also going to allow us, we're going to have tables set up in the cafe where you can kind of set up your family at a table by yourselves, and it'll allow you to have a little bit of space where the kids can play with. They're going to have some coloring activities and some different things like that where they can hopefully kind of sit and worship with you, but even if they get antsy or need to have something else to do there, you're going to have a little bit of space at those tables in the cafe where hopefully your kids can stay focused for a little while we're worshiping. Our 180 students will continue to offer their midweek Wednesday evening meetings on Zoom for now, and are going to sit with their families during our worship services. So we're not going to resume any 180 specific gatherings at church. We're just going to continue to allow them to do their midweek thing on Zoom that they've been doing, and we're going to invite them to sit with their families instead of all sitting together. And I know it's going to be difficult to convince your teenager not to sit with their friends, but we just want to ask as best as you can to have your students sit with you during this season so that we don't have cross-household, cross-families connecting and all of the kids sitting together. And finally, 180 students, which is 7th graders and above, are welcome into the sanctuary. We know that our 7th graders, our 9th graders, our 180 kids are a little more capable of keeping their masks on and sitting in their seats without getting up and running around like the younger kids would be. So they're welcome to come in and sit in the worship center. But families with younger children. So if you've got a 180 student that's in 9th grade and maybe a 3rd grader or something that is in your family, we would ask you guys, if you've got a 6th grader or under that's in our children's ministry, to go ahead and find that seat in the cafe or in the family overflow that we're going to have available upstairs. Question number 8, how long are our services going to be? So in order to help families with children, like we just talked about, and to limit the time that people are seated together inside, we're going to be shortening our services for a little while, that we're going to be targeting a service of around 45 to 55 minutes. So it's going to be a little bit shorter than what you're used to, but hopefully that will allow both families with children to keep everybody sane and calm in their seats just as best as they can, and also will limit the time where we're sitting together. Question number 9, what about breakfast, coffee, water, any sort of refreshments, things like that? We are not going to be offering any sort of food or drinks at the church during this immediate season. So please feel free to bring your coffee in with you, bring your water bottle in with you, things like that from home. But we would ask that you just be respectful, be aware of your drink, and try as best as you can not to leave spills around and things like that. Just be careful with your drinks as you're bringing them into the building. Lids would be wonderful as best as you can, but also our water fountains are going to be closed during this season. We're just, as best as we can, we want to try to limit any of those high contact points, and water fountains are something that we have seen kind of identified as a concern for some people. So we just want to eliminate that concern. So if you are going to need water, your kids are going to need water, just bring a water bottle with you and plan on bringing accommodations for that. Question number 10, what about live streaming? What about if I'm not comfortable coming back to the church building yet, are you still going to take care of me? I know that's a question that a lot of our people have asked. So all of our services are going to be live streamed. For anyone who is unable to join us in person at the church property for services, so that means that there's actually going to be more live streaming available online as we enter this process of getting back together in person. So those services are going to be streamed live on our YouTube channel at both 5 p.m. on Saturday evenings and at 10 a.m. on Sunday mornings. Both of those recordings are going to remain available online, so if you are not able to log in and watch during one of those times, those will still be available to you. And so please don't feel like we're going to forget about you, that we are taking something away from you. There's actually going to be more opportunities for you to live stream with our church family. It's just going to look a little bit different. You're not going to see those ugly mini blinds behind me from my house anymore. You're going to get to watch us as we gather together in person. You're just going to watch from the back of the room. So question number 11, what about communion? in the coming weeks, we have no immediate plan to partake of communion together as a congregation. So this is something that I struggled with, was difficult for us as elders to come to an agreement on. But for right now, in the immediate future, we're not planning on partaking of communion together, just because we want to make sure that we are doing everything and doing it in a safe way. And so we're just going to take our time with that. We're not going to rush back to it as the weeks and maybe months go by, and we start to get a better feel for what gathering in person looks like. All of this information, whether it's communion or seating or children's ministry or any of these things, all of this is subject to change in the coming weeks or the coming months. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like and how those details are going to shake out. So, but for right now, we are not planning on partaking of communion together, just because we know that distributing food and drink in our services is going to add an extra degree of concern for some people. So we want to try to alleviate that. Finally, last question, official question, question number 12, what can I do to help? So there is lots of preparation that needs to be done in order to get the building ready, to get things ready here for us to gather back together on June the 6th and June the 7th. And we would love to get your help. So if you would be willing to volunteer, if you're able to help out, maybe you're working from home or you've got a little extra time on your hands that you would be willing to come help us move chairs around in the building or get some tables set up or do some different things to help us just have church ready to go, have the church building ready to go when our church people are able to come back and gather back together with us. That would be so wonderful. We need all the help we can get. So if you would let us know by either replying to this email or you can just email us at therock@trcclive.org. You can reach out to us and just let us know that you're willing to volunteer and to help out during the week. We also are going to need lots of extra volunteers to help the ushers, help people get to their seats and maintain distancing as people are coming into the building. We're going to need help with cleaning and sanitizing chairs and touch points and things like I was sharing earlier. We're going to need help with screening people at the doors and helping make sure that people are able to get into the building and do it in a timely way. And so the more volunteers we have for all of these things, the better it's going to be for everyone else as they try to come in and as we try to keep people safe. So if you're willing to volunteer at one of our services or to help out with one of those types of tasks, if you would reach out to Michael Camarena, that would be wonderful. You can reach out to Michael via email at michaelc@trcclive.org. And the last thing that we want to ask from you guys, just one final detail that I want to share with you. We are going to be doing everything that we can to prepare to see you guys, not this coming weekend, but next weekend, June the 6th and June the 7th. But we're going to be sending out an email probably end of this week or maybe the start of next week, maybe Monday, Tuesday of next week, asking people to register their family for attendance at one of the services. So this is just going to help us be prepared. We really don't have any idea of how many people are going to show up, of who's going to come, of who's comfortable getting back together in person, who wants to prefer to come on Saturday night versus Sunday mornings. And so if you would, please keep an eye out for that email. It's just going to be really helpful for us to be able to look at those results and know, all right, this family is planning on coming on Sunday. This family is planning on coming on Saturday night. This couple is planning on coming on Saturday night. So the better we can know how many people to anticipate for each of those services, it's just going to help us be more prepared. So if you would, please just keep an eye out for that and respond to that in a timely fashion at the start of next week so that we can be well prepared for things when you guys come back together with us here at this beautiful building on June 6th and June the 7th. So with all of those questions answered, hopefully we checked off a bunch of the details. Hopefully it makes sense, and I just beg and plead with you guys as it's my desire as a pastor, as a guy who loves each and every one of you. we've got a lot of people in our church, and we've got a lot of people with different opinions about the coronavirus and different opinions about what this should look like or could look like getting back together. And we are just, I'm begging you guys as best as you can, please, 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 try as best as you can to embody that attitude that those scripture verses that I read at the start of this video talk about. Love one another, serve one another, outdo one another in showing honor to one another. The sacrifices of our freedoms, of our conveniences, of our comfort that we're gonna make sacrifices as we gather back together. We're doing it not because we are convinced that any of these things, that what you think about the measures is really not important. The question is, are you willing to love your neighbor that's sitting next to you enough to take those steps, to love them enough to protect them, even if it's a little bit of an inconvenience to us? So we love you guys. I am looking forward. I'm excited. This is a thrilling time for me, and for us to be able to get back together and to see you guys in person. I get to stop looking at this silly camera that I've been preaching to for the last 3 months, and I get to see your beautiful smiling faces again. So I am excited about just being back in this room and being back together with you guys next week. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time, taking half an hour of your time to watch all of these questions and answers. And we love you guys, and we'll see you soon. Have a great week.